The sound of shattering porcelain echoed through the house, followed by a shrill cry. "Sophia, come quickly." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and counted to 5 before responding. "Coming, Layla," I called, forcing a cheerful tone into my voice. As I hurried up the stairs, I couldn't help but wonder what fresh drama awaited me this time. My mother-in-law, Layla, had been living with us for 6 months now, ever since her mysterious illness had rendered her incapable of living alone. At least that's what she claimed. I found her in the guest bedroom, perched on the edge of her bed with a distressed look on her face. Shards of what used to be her favorite teacup lay scattered across the hardwood floor. "Oh, Sophia, thank goodness you're here," Layla said, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, dear. My hands just aren't what they used to be." I plastered on a smile. "Don't worry about it, Layla. I'll clean it up." As I bent down to gather the broken pieces, Layla continued, "I don't know what I'd do without you, Sophia. You're such a blessing." I bit my tongue to keep from saying what I really thought. Instead, I asked, "Do you need anything else while I'm here?" Layla's eyes lit up. "Actually, yes. Could you be a dear and run to the store? I'm craving those little lemon tarts from the bakery across town." I glanced at my watch. It was already 5:30 p.m., and I hadn't even started dinner. "Layla, it's rush hour. That bakery is on the other side of the city. It would take me at least an hour to get there and back." Her face fell. "Oh, I see. I just thought. Never mind. I'm sure I can manage without them." The guilt trip was coming, right on cue. I sighed, knowing I was about to cave. "All right, I'll go, but it might be a while before I'm back." Layla beamed. "You're an angel, Sophia, truly." As I drove across town, stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of resentment. This wasn't how I had imagined my life would be at 38. I had a successful career, a loving husband, and plans for the future. Now it felt like everything revolved around Layla's needs and whims. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Where are you? I'm home early." I typed back quickly, "Running an errand for your mother. Be back soon." When I finally returned home, laden with lemon tarts, I found Ethan in the kitchen, looking confused. "Hey," he said, giving me a quick kiss. "I thought you'd be home. What's all this?" I held up the bakery box. "Your mother had a craving." Ethan's brow furrowed. "You drove all the way across town during rush hour for tarts?" "She dropped her teacup and seemed upset. I thought it might cheer her up," I explained, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. Ethan sighed. "Sophia, you don't have to do everything she asks, you know? Mom's not as helpless as she lets on." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and have you told her that?" Before Ethan could respond, Layla's voice floated down from upstairs. "Sophia? Ethan, is that you?" "Yes, Mom," Ethan called back. "We're down here." Layla appeared at the top of the stairs, moving slowly and gripping the railing. "Oh, good. I was worried about you, Sophia. The roads can be so dangerous at this time of day." As she made her way down, I noticed how steady her movements were, despite her supposed frailty. A seed of doubt began to take root in my mind. Layla's eyes lit up when she saw the bakery box. "Oh, you got the tarts. How wonderful. Ethan, your wife is simply the best. Don't you agree?" Ethan nodded, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. For the first time, I wondered if he was starting to see what I had suspected all along. As we settled in for another evening catering to Layla's every need, I made a silent promise to myself. Something had to change, and soon. I couldn't keep living like this, trapped in a life I never asked for. The question was, how far was I willing to go to reclaim my freedom? The next morning, I woke to the sound of hushed voices coming from downstairs. Curious, I crept down the stairs, careful to avoid the creaky step near the bottom. "Ethan, darling," Layla's voice drifted from the kitchen. "I'm worried about Sophia. She seems so stressed lately." I froze, straining to hear Ethan's response. "Mom, she's fine. She's just adjusting to the new situation." Layla sighed dramatically. "I just feel terrible, being such a burden on you both. Maybe it would be best if I went to a nursing home." My heart leaped at the possibility, but Ethan's response crushed that fleeting hope. "Don't be ridiculous, Mom. We're not sending you to a home. We'll figure something out." I chose that moment to make my presence known, walking into the kitchen with a forced smile. "Good morning, you two. What's going on?" Layla's face transformed instantly, a mask of cheerful innocence sliding into place. "Oh, Sophia, we were just discussing how we could make things easier for you, dear." Ethan nodded, his expression earnest. Mom thinks she's being a burden, but I assured her that's not the case. I bit back the urge to agree with Layla's assessment. Instead, I poured myself a cup of coffee and said, "Of course not. We're family, after all." Layla beamed, but there was a glint in her eye that made me uneasy. "You're so kind, Sophia, but I was thinking perhaps it would be best if someone was here full-time to help me. I hate to ask, but..." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Full-time, but I have a job, Layla. We can't afford to hire a nurse." Ethan cleared his throat. "Actually, I was thinking maybe you could take a leave of absence from work, just for a little while until Mom's better." The mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor. Coffee splashed across the tile, but I barely noticed. "You want me to quit my job?" "Not quit," Ethan said quickly. "Just take some time off. We can manage on my salary for a while." I stared at him, disbelief and anger warring inside me. "Ethan, can I talk to you privately for a moment?" We stepped into the living room, leaving Layla in the kitchen. As soon as we were out of earshot, I hissed, "Have you lost your mind? I can't just abandon my career." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking torn. "It's not forever, Sophia. Mom needs us right now." "And what about what I need?" I demanded. "What about our plans, our future?" "This is temporary," Ethan insisted. "Please, Sophia, I don't know what else to do." I closed my eyes, feeling trapped. The weight of expectation and guilt pressed down on me, suffocating my protests. Finally, I whispered, "Fine, I'll do it. But this can't go on indefinitely, Ethan." He pulled me into a hug, relief evident in his voice. "Thank you. I promise we'll figure something out soon." As we returned to the kitchen, Layla looked up with wide, innocent eyes. "Is everything all right, dears?" I forced a smile. "Yes, Layla. I've decided to take some time off work to help care for you." The triumph in her eyes was unmistakable, though quickly masked by a show of concern. "Oh, Sophia, I couldn't possibly ask that of you." "It's already decided," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. Later that day, as I called my boss to request a leave of absence, I felt a piece of my identity slipping away. My career, my independence, my dreams, all put on hold for a woman who seemed determined to control every aspect of our lives. That night, as Ethan slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I had become a prisoner in my own home, and Layla held the key. A plan began to form in my mind. If Layla wanted to play games, I could play too. But unlike her, I would be playing for keeps. As I drifted off to sleep, a small, determined smile played at the corners of my mouth. Layla had no idea what she was in for. 2 weeks into my new role as Layla's full-time caretaker, I was ready to scream. The constant demands, the manipulation, the way she monopolized every moment of my day, it was driving me to the brink of sanity. "Sophia!" Layla's voice rang out from upstairs. "I need you." I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to respond calmly. "Coming, Layla." I found her sitting at her vanity, a look of distress on her face. "Oh, Sophia, I'm having such a terrible hair day. Would you be a dear and style it for me?" I stared at her perfectly coiffed hair, disbelief washing over me. "Layla, your hair looks fine," she pouted, looking at me through the mirror. "But I have that luncheon with the ladies from church today. I want to look my best." "The luncheon isn't for 3 hours," I pointed out. "Please, Sophia, you're so good at this sort of thing." 30 minutes later, I emerged from Layla's room, my patience hanging by a thread. I needed air, space, anything to escape the suffocating presence of my mother-in-law. I was halfway down the stairs when Layla called out again. "Sophia, I've changed my mind about my outfit. Could you help me choose something else?" Something inside me snapped. "No, Layla, I can't. I'm not your personal stylist or your maid. I'm your daughter-in-law, and I deserve some respect." Silence fell, heavy and oppressive. Then I heard the soft sound of sniffling. Guilt immediately washed over me, battling with my frustration. I trudged back up the stairs, finding Layla dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I'm so sorry, Sophia," she whimpered. "I never meant to be a burden. Perhaps it would be best if I just went to that nursing home after all." The guilt intensified, even as a small voice in my head whispered that this was just another manipulation tactic. "No, Layla, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have snapped at you. Let's find you an outfit, okay?" As I helped Layla dress, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing myself in this new reality. My career, my independence, my identity, all were slipping away, replaced by an endless cycle of catering to Layla's whims. That evening, when Ethan came home, I was at my breaking point. "We need to talk," I said, pulling him into the kitchen while Layla watched her evening soaps. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked, concern etching his features. I took a deep breath. "This isn't working. Ethan, I can't keep doing this. Your mother she's taking over our lives." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Sophia, we talked about this. It's temporary. Mom needs us right now." "But for how long?" I demanded. "I've given up my job, my life. When does it end?" Before Ethan could respond, Leela's voice floated in from the living room. "Ethan, is that you, darling? Could you come here for a moment?" Ethan gave me an apologetic look. "We'll finish this conversation later, okay?" As he walked away, I felt something inside me harden. This couldn't go on. I needed to take action, to reclaim my life before it was too late. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. My finger hovered over the call button as I weighed my options. If I made this call, there would be no going back. It could change everything. My relationship with Ethan, our family dynamic, maybe even our marriage. But as I heard Layla's laughter drifting in from the other room, mingling with Ethan's, I knew I had no choice. I pressed the call button, my heart pounding as I waited for an answer. When the voice on the other end picked up, I spoke quietly but firmly. "Hello, this is Sophia Williams. I'd like to schedule a consultation with a private investigator. It's about my mother-in-law. I think she might be faking her illness." As I ended the call, a mix of guilt and determination washed over me. I was taking a huge risk, but I couldn't live like this anymore. One way or another, I was going to uncover the truth about Layla, no matter the cost. The private investigator's report arrived a week later, landing in my inbox with a soft ping that belied its explosive contents. I glanced around furtively, making sure Layla was occupied with her afternoon soap operas before opening the email. As I scrolled through the document, my eyes widened in disbelief. Photos, financial records, and detailed accounts painted a picture of Layla's life that was far from the frail, helpless woman who had invaded our home. There she was, laughing with friends at a country club luncheon just days before her illness struck. Another photo showed her vigorously playing tennis. Bank statements revealed large withdrawals coinciding with her sudden need for care. But it was the last page that made my blood run cold. A copy of Ethan's father's will, with a clause I'd never known about. Layla would receive a substantial monthly allowance as long as she lived with and was cared for by family. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Layla wasn't sick. She was conning us, manipulating her way into our lives for financial gain. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. Anger, betrayal, and a perverse sense of vindication warred within me. I had been right all along, but the truth was far worse than I'd imagined. "Sophia?" Layla's voice drifted from the living room. "Could you bring me some tea, dear?" I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to respond calmly. "Of course, Layla. I'll be right there." As I prepared the tea, my mind raced. Should I confront her? Tell Ethan? The weight of this knowledge pressed down on me, demanding action. I carried the tea tray into the living room, studying Layla's face as I set it down. She smiled up at me, the picture of innocent gratitude. How many times had I fallen for that act? "Thank you, darling," she said, reaching for the cup. "You know, I was just thinking about how blessed I am to have you and Ethan caring for me. I don't know what I'd do without you." Something inside me snapped. "I think you'd manage just fine, Layla. In fact, I'm sure you'd be back on the tennis court in no time." Layla's cup froze halfway to her lips, her eyes widening in shock. I don't know what you mean, Sophia." I pulled out my phone, bringing up one of the photos from the investigator's report. "Really? Because this was taken just 2 weeks before you moved in with us. You look pretty spry for someone about to become an invalid." The color drained from Layla's face. For a moment, her mask slipped, revealing a calculating coldness I'd never seen before. Then, just as quickly, it was replaced by a look of hurt confusion. "Oh, Sophia," she said, her voice trembling. "How could you think such things, after everything we've been through together?" I stood my ground, even as doubt began to creep in. Was I making a terrible mistake? "No more games, Layla. I know about the clause in the will. I know why you're really here." Layla's demeanor changed instantly. The frail, helpless act, vanished, replaced by a steely resolve. "Well," she said, her voice sharp, "I see you've done your homework, but tell me, dear, what do you plan to do with this information?" The challenge in her tone caught me off guard. I realized I hadn't thought this far ahead. I'm going to tell Ethan, of course. He deserves to know the truth." Layla laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. "And you think he'll believe you over me? His devoted mother who raised him? Oh, Sophia, you're more naive than I thought." Her words hit me like a physical blow. She was right. I had no idea how Ethan would react. Would he believe me? Or would this drive a wedge between us, destroying our marriage? As I stood there, frozen in indecision, Layla's voice cut through my thoughts. "So, my dear daughter-in-law, what's it going to be? Are you really prepared for what happens next?" I met her gaze, seeing the challenge there, the absolute certainty that she held all the cards. In that moment, I realized the true depth of the trap I was in. This wasn't just about reclaiming my life anymore. It was about exposing a lifetime of lies and manipulation. The question hung in the air between us, demanding an answer. What was I prepared to do? As I opened my mouth to respond, I knew my next words would change everything. The tension in the house was palpable after my confrontation with Layla. We danced around each other, every interaction laced with unspoken accusations and barely concealed hostility. I hadn't told Ethan yet, the weight of my discovery pressing down on me like a physical burden. One morning, as I was preparing breakfast, Layla swept into the kitchen with an air of determination. "Sophia, dear, I've been thinking," she announced, her voice syrupy sweet. "I feel terrible about how much you've had to sacrifice for me. I think it's time we hired a professional carer." I nearly dropped the spatula I was holding, shock coursing through me. "What?" Layla smiled benevolently. "You've done so much, and I can see it's taking a toll. This way you can go back to work, and I'll have the care I need. It's a win-win, don't you think?" My mind raced. Was this a trap? A way to make me look unreasonable if I refused? Or was Layla genuinely backing down? "That's very considerate of you, Layla," I managed to say, my voice tight with suspicion. "Wonderful." Layla clapped her hands together. "I've already found the perfect agency. They can start next week." As Layla bustled out of the kitchen, I stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. It felt like a victory, but something about it left me uneasy. True to her word, the following week saw the arrival of Sarah, a cheerful and efficient carer who quickly took over most of Layla's daily needs. I found myself with an abundance of free time, a concept that had become foreign to me over the past months. Determined to reclaim some semblance of my former life, I started job hunting. It wasn't easy. My skills were rusty, and the gap in my employment history raised eyebrows. But finally, after weeks of searching, I landed a position at a small marketing firm. The pay was less than half of what I'd earned before, but it was a start. As I settled into my new routine, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Layla seemed almost too accommodating, too willing to let me regain my independence. The Layla I knew would never relinquish control so easily. My suspicions were confirmed one evening when I overheard a conversation between Layla and Sarah. I had come home early, a migraine forcing me to leave work, and their voices drifted up from the living room. "You're doing wonderfully, Sarah," Layla was saying. "Sophia suspects nothing. Soon we'll be able to move to the next phase of our plan." Sarah's response was too low for me to hear, but Layla's chilling laugh rang out clearly. "Oh, don't worry about Ethan. He's always been easy to manipulate. Once Sophia's out of the picture, everything will fall into place." I stumbled back, my heart pounding. The migraine forgotten, adrenaline coursed through my veins. Layla wasn't backing down. She was escalating her game, and somehow she had enlisted Sarah in her schemes. My mind raced with possibilities. What was Layla planning? How deep did this deception go? And most terrifyingly, what did she mean by getting me out of the picture? I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts. I needed help, but who could I trust? Ethan was still under Layla's spell, and involving the authorities without concrete evidence seemed risky. As I sat there, paralyzed by indecision, a notification popped up on my phone. It was a reminder for Ethan's and my anniversary dinner, scheduled for the following evening. A plan began to form in my mind, desperate and risky, but potentially our only chance. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to do. Tomorrow night at dinner I would lay all my cards on the table. I would tell Ethan everything. The private investigator's report, the overheard conversation, all of it. It was a gamble that could cost me my marriage, but the alternative was unthinkable. As I began to prepare for the most important dinner of my life, one thought echoed through my mind. This ends tomorrow, one way or another. My heart raced as I prepared for our anniversary dinner. The weight of the hidden camera in my purse felt like a ticking bomb. I had made the decision to record everything, hoping to gather irrefutable evidence of Layla's deception. Ethan and I arrived at the restaurant, the tension between us palpable. As we sat down, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Ethan," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "there's something I need to tell you about your mother." His brow furrowed. "Sophia, not this again. Can't we just enjoy our anniversary without?" "No," I interrupted firmly. "This can't wait. I have proof that Layla has been lying to us." I pulled out my phone, showing him the photos from the private investigator. Ethan's face paled as he scrolled through them, disbelief etched across his features. This can't be real," he muttered. "It is," I insisted. "And there's more. I overheard her talking to Sarah. They're planning something, Ethan. Something to get rid of me." Ethan's head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock. "What are you saying?" Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from our neighbor. "Emergency at home. Come back immediately." We rushed back, my mind racing with possibilities. As we pulled into the driveway, I saw Layla on the front porch, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, thank goodness you're here," she cried. "There was a break-in. They took everything." We entered the house, finding it in disarray, but something felt off. The chaos seemed staged. As Layla sobbed dramatically, recounting the supposed break-in, I noticed Ethan's expression hardening. He had seen it too. "Mom," he said quietly, "stop. Just stop." Layla froze, her tears suddenly drying up. "What do you mean, darling?" Ethan held up my phone, still displaying the damning photos. "Explain this." The change in Layla was instantaneous and chilling. Her vulnerable facade melted away, replaced by a cold, calculating look. "Well," she said, her voice icy, "I see Sophia has been busy. I underestimated you, dear." "Why?" Ethan demanded. "Why would you do this to us?" Layla laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Why? Because I deserve it. I spent years caring for your father, putting my life on hold. This is my reward." As she spoke, I discreetly activated the hidden camera in my purse, capturing every word. "But the illness, the constant demands," I pressed. "Was it all an act?" "Of course it was," Layla sneered. "And you both fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. It was almost too easy." Ethan's face crumpled in pain and betrayal. "Get out," he whispered. "Excuse me?" Layla's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Get out," Ethan shouted, his voice raw with emotion. "You have 1 week to leave. After that, I'm cutting you off completely." Layla's composure cracked, panic flashing in her eyes. "You can't do that. I'm your mother." "No," Ethan said firmly. "You're a liar and a manipulator. We're done." As Layla's protests grew more frantic, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It was finally over. But then Layla's eyes locked onto mine, filled with a hatred so intense it made me step back. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You'll regret this, Sophia. I promise you that." As she stormed upstairs, slamming doors behind her, I turned to Ethan. His face was a mask of pain and confusion. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, reaching for his hand. He pulled away, his voice hollow. "I need some time. It's too much." As Ethan walked out, leaving me alone in the wreckage of our living room, the full weight of what had just happened crashed down on me. We had won, but at what cost? The house felt eerily quiet, the aftermath of our confrontation hanging heavy in the air. Upstairs, I could hear Layla moving around, no doubt plotting her next move. I sank onto the couch, exhausted and overwhelmed. The battle was over, but I had a sinking feeling that the war was just beginning. As I sat there, surrounded by the remnants of Layla's staged break-in, one question echoed in my mind. What would she do next? The week following Layla's exposure was a whirlwind of tension and barely contained chaos. Ethan had retreated into himself, spending long hours at work and barely speaking when he was home. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, torn between relief that the truth was out and fear of what was to come. Layla, for her part, oscillated between fits of rage and bouts of theatrical despair. One moment she'd be hurling accusations and threats. the next sobbing and begging for forgiveness. It was exhausting and nerve-wracking, never knowing which version of her we'd encounter. On the eve of her departure, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I heard raised voices from the living room. I crept closer, my heart pounding. "You can't do this to me, Ethan," Layla wailed. "I'm your mother. Where am I supposed to go?" Ethan's voice was strained but firm. "We've been through this, Mom. You lied to us, manipulated us. You can't stay here anymore." "It's all Sophia's fault," Layla spat. "She turned you against me. She never understood our bond." I flinched at the venom in her words, but Ethan's response made my heart swell. "No, Mom, this is on you. Sophia has been nothing but patient and kind, even when you were treating her horribly. It's over." Suddenly, Layla's tone changed, becoming sickly sweet. "Darling, please. I know I made mistakes, but can't we start over? I'll do better, I promise. Just give me one more chance." There was a long pause, and for a terrifying moment, I thought Ethan might cave. Then he spoke, his voice heavy with finality. "No, Mom, it's too late for that. You need to leave tomorrow, as we agreed." I heard Layla's sharp intake of breath, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Rushing into the living room, I found Ethan standing amid the shattered remains of a vase, Layla nowhere in sight. "Are you okay?" I asked, reaching for him. Ethan nodded, looking dazed. "She just lost it, threw the vase and stormed upstairs." We spent the next hour cleaning up the mess, the silence between us thick with unspoken emotions. As we finished, Ethan finally met my eyes. "I'm sorry," he said softly, "for not believing you sooner, for putting you through all this." I felt tears welling up. "It's okay. We're going to get through this together." Just as we embraced, a blood-curdling scream echoed from upstairs. We raced up to find Layla sprawled at the bottom of the attic stairs, clutching her leg. "Help me," she cried. "I've fallen. I think it's broken." Ethan immediately moved to help her, but I held him back, suspicion flaring. "Wait," I whispered. "Remember the last time?" He hesitated, conflict clear on his face. Layla's cries grew more insistent. "Please, I'm in agony. Call an ambulance." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "Layla, we're going to call for help, but first I want you to stand up." Her eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in fury. "How dare you? Can't you see I'm injured?" "Stand up," I repeated firmly, "or we'll assume this is just another act." For a moment the room was silent, except for Layla's labored breathing. Then, slowly, incredulously, she got to her feet, her supposedly broken leg bearing her weight just fine. "You heartless bitch," she snarled at me. "You've ruined everything." Before I could react, she lunged at me, her hands clawing for my face. I stumbled backward, nearly falling down the stairs myself. Ethan intervened, pulling his mother away. "That's it," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "You're leaving now. Tonight." As Ethan dragged Layla away to pack her bags, I leaned against the wall, my legs weak with relief and residual fear. We had won, but the victory felt hollow. Looking at Ethan's pained expression as he argued with Layla down the hall, I realized we still had a long way to go. The immediate threat was nearly over, but the emotional fallout was just beginning. As I heard Layla's shrill protests and Ethan's weary responses, I steeled myself for one last confrontation. Tomorrow our house would be free of Layla's presence, but would our lives ever truly be free of her influence? Only time would tell. 6 months after Layla's dramatic exit from our lives, I stood in our newly redecorated living room, taking in the peace that had finally settled over our home. The last traces of Layla's presence had been erased, replaced by colors and furnishings that Ethan and I had chosen together. As I sipped my morning coffee, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from Claire, a family friend who had once been close to Layla. I opened it with trepidation, half expecting another plea on Layla's behalf. Instead, I found myself staring at a photo that made my blood run cold. It showed Layla, looking haggard and unkempt, working behind the counter of a dingy convenience store. The caption read, "Karma's a bitch, isn't it?" I felt a complex mix of emotions wash over me, satisfaction, pity, and a lingering anger that surprised me with its intensity. Layla had faced the consequences of her actions, stripped of the comfortable life she had schemed so hard to maintain. "What is it?" Ethan's voice startled me. He had come up behind me, peering over my shoulder at the phone. I handed it to him wordlessly, watching his face as he took in the image. His expression hardened, then softened, a myriad of emotions playing across his features. I never wanted this for her, he said quietly. Despite everything, she's still my mother. I nodded, understanding his conflict. I know, but she made her choices, Ethan. We can't take responsibility for that. He set the phone down, pulling me into a tight embrace. You're right, it's still hard sometimes. As we stood there holding each other, I realized how far we'd come. The strain that Layla had placed on our marriage had nearly broken us, but we'd emerged stronger, more united than ever before. The doorbell rang, interrupting our moment. I opened it to find a courier holding a thick envelope. Delivery for Sophia and Ethan Williams, he announced. I signed for the package, my curiosity piqued. As soon as the door closed, I tore it open, Ethan looking on with equal interest. Inside was a legal document, its language dense and official. But the gist of it was clear. Layla was relinquishing all claims to Ethan's father's estate, including the monthly allowance she had manipulated us for. I don't understand, Ethan murmured, reading over my shoulder. Why would she do this now? Attached to the document was a handwritten note. With trembling hands, I unfolded it and read aloud. Sophia and Ethan, I know these words can never undo the harm I've caused. My actions were inexcusable, driven by greed and a misguided sense of entitlement. Losing everything, my home, my status, and most importantly, my family, has forced me to confront the person I've become. I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I deserve it. But I hope that by relinquishing these final ties, I can offer you both the clean break you deserve. Live your lives free from my shadow. Be happy and know that I truly regret the pain I've caused. Layla. As I finished reading, I looked up to see tears in Ethan's eyes. My own vision blurred as the weight of Layla's words sank in. Do you think she means it? I asked softly. Ethan took a deep breath. I don't know, but I think this is the closest to an apology we're ever going to get. We sat in silence for a long moment, processing this unexpected turn of events. Finally, I spoke. What do you want to do? Ethan met my gaze, his eyes clear and determined. I want to move forward, with you. We've given her enough of our lives already. I nodded, feeling a sense of finality settle over me. Together, then? As we embraced once more, I felt the last lingering traces of tension leave my body. The ordeal with Layla had tested us to our limits, but we had survived. More than that, we had reclaimed our lives and our relationship. Looking around our home, our sanctuary, I knew that whatever challenges the future held, Ethan and I would face them as a united front. We had weathered the storm of Layla's manipulation and emerged stronger for it. As the morning sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over our renewed life together, I felt a profound sense of peace. The chapter with Layla was finally truly closed. And our story, Ethan's and mine, was just beginning anew.